Good morning. Welcome to Tuesdays with Kamira. I am Kamira, and I have a wonderful guest for us today. Her name is Ashley Morolla, and she's going to talk to us about something very important that we all need to talk more about, although it's new for most of us parents. And we're going to be talking about the mental health effects of school active shooter drills on our children, what we should know, what we can do to help them, because this is part of their world. And it wasn't part of our world, so it's new for us, but it's part of theirs and it's having impact on them in many ways. And she's going to help us understand that. Welcome, Ashley.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. This is an important conversation. I want to remind anyone joining us live that you are welcome to dialogue with us by putting your comments or your questions in the comment section, and we will be looking for those. Ashley, before we get into this, and this is a very deep conversation, tell us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Sure. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I work for Care Plus, which is a nonprofit mental health agency in Bergen County, New Jersey. We service everyone from children all the way up to adults. I myself focus on working with those that have endured experiences of trauma, high levels of stress. I've worked in outpatient settings. I primarily focus a lot of my time on doing trainings through our STOP grant, which is co-funded under the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. So I have the ability to go into all of the schools, K through 12, throughout Bergen County, offering free trainings on mental health for students, education for the staff, principals, nursing staff in the schools, and talking exactly about this, what threat assessment models can do for the schools, what mental health components are important for us to know, and how, most importantly, we can prevent things from happening and support our students at the same time.
Wonderful. Thank you. That is very important work. Today, we're going to talk about one segment of that, which you see, and that is the effect of active shooter drills on our teens and tweens. But before we talk about that, I'm going to give us a little bit of context, and I'm going to give us an actual definition. According to the FBI, an active shooter is an individual actively engaging in killing or attempting to kill people in a populated area. And recent active shooter incidents have underscored the need for a coordinated response by law enforcement and others to save lives. Hence, the fact that we have these shooter drills now in schools, and some states mandate them. I have a college student son who was telling me that a friend who goes to college in a state other than the one he goes to, that every class sheet at the beginning of every class, at the beginning of each semester and the beginning of each class of that semester, they are told what would happen in the class should there be an active shooter, what they'll do. That is mandated by that state. Not all states do it. So this is not just for our teens and tweens, but it's, the college students and below. It is a reality. Recently, there has been some research that has dropped on the effects of these active shooter drills, and people are starting to ask, are they necessary? Are they doing more harm than good? What is the effect on our kids? And there's a difference depending upon the age of your kid. Ashley and I were just talking. I'm going to give two interesting things that I heard from real life people. And one is that one of my colleagues was telling me that a friend of hers said that a mom went outside to watch her children who were playing, and she asked them what they were doing. And these were first and second graders. And she's like, "What are you playing?" And they said, "Oh, we're playing active shooter drills." Yeah. Which tells you is how much it's a part of their life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another mom of the same age child was saying that she got a call from a teacher, and the teacher said, "I need your help. Your daughter's fine. She's doing really well. But when we have these active shooter drills, she and her friend giggle, and I can't get them to stop talking. And it's important that they stop talking in case we actually have a real incident. They cannot be heard. And I need your help impressing this upon her without scaring her." So that's the wee ones, right?
Yeah, those are the little ones, exactly. And I have a 5-year-old who's in kindergarten. She's graduating tomorrow, actually. And I've heard her dancing around our living room going, "Lockdown, lockdown," just the same as the stories you just told. And they can be a little unnerving because you're like, that's not what I would expect you to be playing with, right? Like dolls or drawing or something else. But it really is an opportunity to get curious with these kiddos, because kids process difficult stuff, fun stuff, happy stuff through play. That's the way their brains work. And when I heard my daughter singing a lockdown song, essentially, that was my chance to say, oh, what happens during a lockdown? Who do you sit next to? What do you have to do? And it turned into a conversation, a playful one, but one that really gave me information of what happens, what she's doing during that time and how she's feeling. And she was able to tell me, that's just in case someone is a stranger and is in the school, and we sit in our cubbies, and, just kind of giving a little bit more information on what that time looks like for her. And she did say, she's like, you have to be quiet. But if we all remember when we were in school, anything that's not academic is a time to chat with your friends. I mean, that's just a time to kind of let loose and relax. But like we do with any other drill, even a fire drill, you do and are supposed to be quiet, even walking out, because again, if you're not listening and following directions or paying attention, you may not be able to hear what the teacher is saying. So that's a really good direction to go with that kind of conversation. We understand it's funny and you're sitting with your friends and you get to chat a little bit, but if you're not hearing me, then you're also not hearing what the next steps are, right? And it's a really important time for us to work together as a team when we're doing these drills.
That is important information. And I know that we are talking to caregivers for tweens and teens, but we wanted to put that out there because some of you have children of all ages and grandchildren, and it's important. And this is what's happening in their lives. Yeah. But our tweens and teens, they understand why they're doing these drills. They're not having playtime activity mimicking them. They understand. But maybe you can help us. I know I never participated. I had earthquake drills, I had fire drills, but I never had an active shooter drill. And the truth is, of my 5 children, only one, the youngest, has had them. So I wasn't familiar. But you were telling me in the pregame that you participated in one. So what happens? Tell us, for those of us who don't know.
So same, I never had an active shooter drill experience in school age, high school, nothing. And I learned that my daughter, who I say is now 5, she was practicing them from daycare. And I didn't even know she was doing that in daycare, but they would kind of like go in the bathrooms. They would play like the quiet time, like not really tell them what was going on. And I said to myself, I said, you know what? I'm going around talking about threat assessment teams, the importance of knowing what the aftermath of these drills can be doing to our students. And I've never sat through one myself. So I asked one of my colleagues if I could come to a middle school within Bergen County and sit through one. And I went into a class. It was a smaller classroom. I knew it was going to happen. I knew the routine that school participated in. And I still sat there in the corner, huddling, kind of looking around like, what am I supposed to be doing? Where am I supposed to go? And it was so interesting to see how the kids were so uniformed and they knew exactly where to sit, how to be quiet, when to wait, like when the next steps were. And I was just in my own head going, how long is this going to be? Is this going to be over? How are we going to know when it's over? And what was interesting was that when I spoke to some folks of the school, the majority of the staff said, we have no problems with our kids being nervous here. They all understand what's going on. We don't see any, again, middle school kids. So 11 years old to 13 years old. I went into one classroom after that drill was over. And we asked like, hey, how was that for you guys? I know you've been doing this for a while, but how was it? And there were at least 5 or 6 kids in that grade or in that classroom that said, you know what, we never know if it's real or not. It's so nerve-wracking every time it happens. And clearly no one had the conversation because from what I was told, everyone's fine. Yeah. And we can't assume that everyone's fine just because they've been doing it for so long, right? They still may have those same reactions of, is this practice? Is this a drill? We're not going to know until it's over. And it can be overwhelming and stressful for some students, maybe not for all, right? But for some, it really might still impact them.
So give us some conversation starters or activities that we can do so that we can find out how they're feeling, because the teachers didn't know how they were feeling. And it's important for us to know, and we as parents and guardians, what can we do so that we can extract the information from them and find out, maybe some of them are fine and maybe some of them are feeling very anxious.
Yeah. So I would just build on that. Again, find those opportunities for conversation. Some districts I know will actually let parents know when a drill has occurred and it's been completed. And some might not. So it's really having those conversations with your children. Hey, how was school today? Did anything happen? I know you guys are supposed to do a drill once a month. Did that happen already? And when they say yes or no, that's your chance to say, so I've never been through a drill. What are you supposed to do? Like where in your classroom do you go? Because schools aren't going to tell you where the 10% of the classrooms are, for children to sit in for safety. They're not going to tell you who's knocking on the door to let you know the drill is over. That's for the students and the teachers to know, right? Justifiably. But it's very easy for us to have a conversation with our children just to say, when you are having these drills, what's going on in your mind? Who do you sit with? Who do you feel safe with? Who can you talk to in school after they're over if you're still feeling a little distressed by the situation? It's really good information to have, and just being able to hold that space for them, whether they want to talk about it or not. It's just so they know they can.
Okay. And I would imagine if a student is anxious or nervous or worried about this, that some amount of that is to be expected and is okay. How do we know when they've gone beyond that and that this is something that needs attention?
Yeah. So again, we all experience the stress response in our bodies, and typically it doesn't take very long for our bodies to recognize that we're no longer in danger, right? So we're able to regulate and kind of move on with our day and our life. When we start seeing that kids are showing changes in their appetite, their sleeping, their mood, maybe they're a kid that likes to go out and hang out with their friends and they're part of athletics and other activities, and suddenly they want to stay home. They don't want to go out. They're not answering their friends. Things that are really not typical for their personality, we really want to be keen on what those changes are. And when they happen, or we start to notice something, again, starting that conversation first and foremost, then just jumping to those conclusions. We know our kids best. So we know when something might be a little different than what we're usually seeing. And it's having that conversation if they're not ready to talk to you as the caregiver, which, we always want our babies to be our best friends, but there comes a time where, you may not be the one they want to talk to. Who can they talk to? Who's their safe person? Do they have a favorite aunt or uncle? Do they have the school counselor in school? Maybe the librarian is their safe person. Whoever it is, make sure they're connecting with them to have that conversation to help them feel settled. And if it goes even farther than that, where maybe the changes aren't going away after 2 to 4 weeks, then maybe reaching out for some additional mental health support can be something that be really beneficial.
Okay. Can there be, or are there any positive social emotional effects from these active shooter drills?
So, just like we do fire drills, right? We're practicing safety, and it's really letting the students know that it's all of our jobs. It's not just the principal's job to keep the school safe, right? It's the teachers, it's the gym teacher, it's the librarian, it's the school security officers, it's the students. It's everyone's responsibility to keep each other safe. And just as we practice fire drills, we hope to God that never happens either, but we need to know where to line up, where to walk out to, the safe amount of feet distant you are from the school. Same thing with active shooter drills. I mean, these children are practicing the unimaginable of someone coming in to do such incredible, heart-wrenching damage. And no one wants to think about your child practicing that, but you're practicing safety. Even if it's not an active shooter drill, if someone does encroach on the property of the school and no one knows who it is, you want your students to know, where do I go? How do I behave in a situation like this? Just to ensure, again, that they're safe, their peers are safe, and everyone is working together. And it also helps to build on resiliency too, because that really builds on that rapport and the trust that the students have with the school system, which we're always working to, incorporate and to strengthen through the time that they're in school.
Okay. I see that. Before I ask any more questions, you are in there. You actually go into the schools with the kids. So tell us what you're seeing, especially in this arena. What are you seeing as far as when students participate in these drills, but also in a broader context? Unfortunately, multiple times a semester, they're hearing about an active shooter situation that has happened in current events.
Yes.
So what are you seeing when this occurs?
So what I'm seeing mostly when I go into schools are the staff asking what they can do. They want tools, they want answers, they want to be the best version of themselves for these students, especially after those tragedies happen, because it's out of our control in a sense, right? I mean, back in the day, we were able just to kind of turn the TV off and out of sight, out of mind. Now it's social media, it's newspaper, it's streaming, it's live, it's the videos that are being shared between kids' phones. It's almost out of hand. And many times the kids that are seeing this information are not developmentally ready to even understand what the information is that they're getting. And for children, especially from middle school age, if they're not getting the answers that they're looking for, or if they don't understand the situation, they'll start to fill in the gaps themselves or get information themselves. So they'll then go online, they'll go on social media, they'll ask their peers who are of the same age for the information. And we all know that, unfortunately, some information out there is not correct. Their peers may not be the best source of information about these issues. So it's really understanding what information it is that your child is seeing. You know, did they see a news clip? Did they hear it in school? What do they understand to have happened about the situation? And that at a developmentally appropriate level, you talk about the situation. If we're talking about kids in elementary school, we're not going to go into any details about what happened, right? It's going to be a basic, what did you hear? What do you think happened? And they may say something like, you know, someone scary walked in the school. Like, yes, someone did scary walked in the school. Some people got hurt. Who were the people that were helping them, right? What did the school do to make it better? Were the officers there, the first aid, the responders, the firefighters? Who was there to help? You know, you shift that focus a bit. And then to ensure them that they are safe and we are doing everything we can to keep them safe in this moment. For our older children, again, we want to get as much information as we can about what they know, what questions they have, and we may not have all the answers. And that's okay. We can say, you know what, I don't know all those details. I'm not sure if that's what's happened. This is what I know. I know a unfortunate incident happened. There was a school shooting. Some people did get really injured, and they don't know much about, you know, who it was or what happened beforehand. And as they get information, and you could kind of further that conversation along. Older kids in high school, you know, they may have a lot more detail. They will have the means to get more of those details, and you could have more towards the adult side of conversations with them, because they can understand what happened, what were some things that led to it. But you could also easily have a conversation of, you know, what changes do you think could have happened for that person before this incident took place? Have you ever heard someone saying anything that they want to hurt themselves or somebody else? What would you do in that situation? What changes do you think your school needs to make after this for you to feel safer? So you could kind of put in more of that activist turn on it for older children that can feel more powerful in a space where they might feel powerless.
Oh, I like that idea. Empower them. Okay, this is controversial, but there are those who believe that the active shooter drills plant the seed of the idea in an unwell mind, and that we should not do them because they plant the seed. Is there any evidence to support that?
So it's almost like the myth that if you say the word suicide, you'll magically put the idea in someone's head. And it really is all a myth. So yes, there is a contagion effect. So for the vulnerable child that may already be at risk, may already be having these thoughts, may already have been in the planning stages, to see incidents on TV roll out, and then may try to copycat that behavior. However, the drills themselves will not plant the seed further. There's a trajectory that we actually see when it comes to violent behavior, harm to self, harm to others. So the whole idea is that we're helping students way at the beginning. Because if we are talking about a child who we're concerned will react in that kind of manner, where it would result in the death or destruction of other people or themselves, then we've missed the mark, like for a while. Because no perpetrator that we've seen on TV, no one in history, has ever just woken up randomly and said, I'm going to go to school or work today and do something to really danger other people and myself. There is always a timeline that we see. Some may start as young as elementary school, some may start middle, high school, but there is always a timeline, and it can take weeks, months, sometimes years for some people to actually go forward with whatever plans they're thinking of. But there are a lot of signs and symptoms and warning signs that we see beforehand that give us the opportunity for intervention. So a drill will not magically make someone think, this might be a good idea. There's many things that go into it. There's motive, there's communication. There's usually a way that some people are actually expressing that they're having these ideas or having these thoughts. Changes of behavior, expression of hopelessness, things that we could pick up on and do something about before we ever have to, God forbid, get to that point where we're worried that a student would actually, engage in these kind of events.
Okay, thank you for that. I want to remind our viewers that there are some articles on the subject that will help you. And I believe we put in actually a link to the most recent research that I talked about at the beginning of this. But I want to ask Ashley, is there anything that we've missed that parents and caregivers really need to know about this subject?
Yeah, so I will say this, and one question I always get from teachers, and I'm sure this happens for fire drills too. It's not just solely for active shooter drills, but right, coming back into the classroom, it's like, man, it's so hard to get them back into their work. It's so hard to kind of wrangle them back into class. And let's be honest, I remember after fire drills, right? No one wants to sit back in their seat and turn to page 42. And right, it's like, we're just going to kind of wait until the class time is over. So I always tell people and teachers, especially, like, there are things we could do to regulate the class. Let's keep in mind they were just practicing for a very tragic event from taking place, right? So we'll keep that at the forefront, aside from them just being students and wanting some free time. But what can we do to really manage their stress levels and regulate them, especially for the students that may be having a higher stress-induced reaction than other students, right? So we can do simple things, shutting the lights off, putting on some calming music. For little ones, maybe it's putting YouTube on, having them dance it out. We hold stress, we hold things that bother us in our bodies, and we need to physically get that energy out of us sometimes. We need to sometimes take a minute before we jump into the next academic taxing task that we're being asked of. So just giving that space, and to also give that space for the teachers themselves. The teachers are so worried about the students, but they're also locked in that room too. Yeah. So it's, if you're not just doing this for your students, do it for yourself. Give yourself the 2 to 3 minutes. That's all you need. Our systems don't take that long to regulate. So if you have the 2 to 3 minutes to spare, shut the lights off, put on some dolphins swimming across the smart board, some calming music, raindrops. Or for high school, maybe you give the 2 to 3 minutes for the kids to just sit there and chat. You put a timer on, and then you get back into class. But for anyone just expecting to walk back in the room and act as if you didn't just, practice the worst day of your life, it's impossible for children, for teenagers, and for adults. So just giving yourself that grace.
Okay. Along the same lines, before we end this conversation, which is incredibly valuable, because there are more and more, or at least more coverage of these types of shootings, schools seem to have widened the geographic area, which if there's an active shooter within, let's say it used to be within a 3-mile radius, they would lock down the school. Now it's maybe a 5-mile or 6-mile radius, which means schools are actually being locked down for real reasons these days. And what is it that we can do in school and after school when we know that's happened? I know that's happened for our youngest when he was in school more than once. And I hear it happening because now it doesn't have to be just on your campus or in the immediate vicinity, because someone may have a car or something like that. So schools go on lockdown, even if somebody is 6 miles away. Okay. That means that the students had a real experience. It wasn't a drill, and they know it's not a drill because they take their phones with them when they go on lockdown. The high schoolers do, and they see what's happening. Yep. So
in real time too, right? In real time.
Yeah. So what can we do? Because we're terrified, right? Because we get the robocall. We're in lockdown. Do not come anywhere near the school, et cetera, et cetera. Absolutely. So what can we do for ourselves? And then once we have our children back in our arms?
So same along the same lines of what we were saying for going back into the classroom, self-care cannot be understated at all. And it's not self-care just in the moments of crisis, because then it doesn't work. Your body won't understand what it means to take a breath, sit down somewhere comfortable, maybe, distract yourself with something healthy, only in a moment of crisis, because in that moment, your brain is going to say, I don't have time for this. This isn't working for me, right? My breathing is out of whack. There's no way I can sit here and take big, deep bubble breaths. It's practicing self-care on a daily basis and knowing what works for you and what works for your child. Maybe it's literally sitting outside in your grass in your backyard. Maybe it's listening to soothing music. Maybe it's having a dance party. Maybe it's like making a cup of tea or cooking something really fun with you and your children. So you know that when rough days like that happen and scary things like that happen, and not just for school lockdowns, but for anything that life can throw at us, you know what works for you and your body, and you know what works for your child, and you know what works when you could do it together. So implementing that as a daily practice can really help them get through those seriously scary moments and other life challenges that might be stressing them out. And they'll have tools that they can use that they know work for them. And it's not only, focusing and relying on one tool. It's like, oh, when I'm stressed out, I go for a run, it helps. Well, you're not going to be able to go for a run every moment of the day. If you're at work, if you're at school, what else can you do? Can you get a glass of water and drink some water? Can you go for a walk through the hallways? Some kids bring like the squishy things in their backpacks. Some kids can identify a friend that they can talk to or just make eye contact with that makes them feel safer. Those little things that we're able to implement in our everyday life really dismisses and mitigates a lot of the stress that we're constantly dealing with. So when big things happen, we have a lot to fall back on.
So I learned something that I want to share and make sure everybody got, that self-care needs to be a routine. Yes. Especially if you can make it a daily routine with the small things and be very intentional about it, because otherwise it won't work during the moment of crisis. And I think that that's what's important for us to hear, because we think if we know these things during a moment of crisis, we employ them like Lamaze, right? But if you didn't practice it during the pregnancy, it's not going to work when you're giving birth. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah. And we're human, right? And I'm sure you've been in a moment where we've all been kind of upset and angry, and, has it ever worked for someone to tell you, like, calm down, take a deep breath, and you're like, oh, I never thought about that, let me try? No, it doesn't work. It's almost invalidating, right? If someone's really upset and scared, just take a deep breath, you'll be fine. That's not true. It's just not true. It's not how our bodies work. We need a system, we need routine, because we thrive in predictable routine environments. And that's what our kids look for. And that's what's so scary about these drills. They're unpredictable. But what can be predictable is the support and the skills we give them afterwards, every time.
That is the perfect place to leave this conversation. I love that. Thank you for joining us. This is very important. We may not want to have this conversation, but we need to have it. And I'm glad you did it with us.
Thank you for having me so much. This was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, you're welcome. I want to thank everybody who's watching, and I hope it was helpful for you. We will see you next week.